Vader, 7th grader here at Priory, and I'm here to talk to you today about my first year here. Ever since kindergarten, I was in public school. I was thriving, looking for a challenge. And yes, that sounds very cocky, but really, it was so easy for me. And for a while, I just sat there telling myself I'll wait for college to be challenged. Well, me being the social kid that I am, I always got in trouble for socializing with classmates when really, I was finished doing my work and I was just trying to help others. This always came up in parent-teacher conferences, and that's when my parents realized that I needed to go to a private school. Priory was the first school I looked at and the only school I looked at. The moment I walked through the doors, when I shattered, it felt like home. It was an experience like no other, and I can't explain it in words. When I shattered, I saw how kind everyone was, and I was shocked. I felt a brotherly bond with the kids at Priory, and I was only there for a couple of hours. When I saw the curriculum, I thought it was awesome too. It was stuff I've never really heard about, and I was really ready to start learning about it. Another reason that drew me here were spiritual reasons. Some people know this, but not many. I was baptized Catholic here in St. Louis, and shortly after, I moved to Huntsville, Alabama. As a kid there, I don't remember much, but I do remember the church. I went to a Church of Christ and never really went to a Catholic church. After a couple years of living in Alabama, I moved back here, and ever since then, I have not had a very frequent church appearance. But every now and then, I will show up at Mass at St. Anselm. I also have not had First Communion yet, but I'm hoping to change that in the near future. The last couple of reasons I came to Priory were athletics and to set me up for college. In grade school, I played baseball and soccer, but always thought it would be cool to try out basketball or football. This spring, I'm playing baseball for the 7th grade team and hope to make varsity in high school. All these things were like too good to be true for me. But after I had the opportunity to attend this wonderful school, I knew I wanted to give back and help give other kids the experience I had. So I became a student ambassador. So far, I've helped host 3 events and have shadowed 6 students. Shadowing at Priory can be tough, and you don't realize it until you do it. Every kid is different, and you kind of have to adjust to them and get comfortable around them in a couple of hours, and that is really challenging. At Priory, my favorite classes are theater, math, and theology. The teachers here help me so much, and they really want you to succeed more than anyone else does. My favorite clubs I attend are Candy Club and the Guild. Candy Club is a new club that the class of 2026 has created this year, and it's where a kid brings in a candy, and it gets an average from 1 to 10 in the categories taste, sweetness, sourness, and texture. Guild is definitely my favorite though, and I just joined it a couple months ago. In Guild, we make stained glass windows and painted banners, and it's all medieval arts. Miss Lane and the Form Masters also make Priory what it is today. I'm usually very early in the morning, and every morning I'm greeted with a good morning from Miss Lane. I remember a few months ago I had a pretty bad morning. I got out of the car and started pumping gas into my dad's car. Right as I went to pull the nozzle out of the gas tank, it splashed all over my brand new dress pants I got for Christmas. So I had to go all the way back home and change. And I'm sure as you guys can imagine, my mom wasn't very thrilled. Well, when I walked into the junior school that morning, Miss Lane noticed something was wrong, and she was there just to help me get back in a good mood so I could academically excel. The lunch here at Priory is okay this year, but nobody is to blame. Apparently last year was really good. The people who make our lunch do their best every day to clean up after us, make our food, wash the containers, and you don't really think about that, and that's a lot of work. The other day I saw a lady cleaning off the table that had something spilt on it. And I walked past her and said thank you for what you do. And now I couldn't see her through her mask, but her eyes said everything. She was so happy to get that one compliment. You might not know them by name. In fact, I don't know many of the lunch workers by name either, but they still deserve respect and kindness. Really, the point of this speech is that Priory is not a school, it is a privilege. This privilege only a few hundred people in the world get to experience every day, and I'm blessed to be among those couple hundred. I thank my dad, mom, all my teachers and brothers for this amazing year, and I can't wait to see what's within the next 5 years to come. To end this year off at Priory, I'll be fixing our abandoned outdoor classroom behind the baseball field. It was abandoned about 15 years ago, and me and my science class are raising money to provide the best outdoor classroom we can make. This project will end up being our final exam in science. I hope to end this year strong, as well as I hope you do as well. I appreciate all your fathers and sons for your time and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Hello, fathers, sons, monks. And sorry if my connection's a bit shaky. I'm currently in a hotel room with my dad in Boston. First off, I'd like to thank Mr. Reese and the Fathers Club for putting this great event together. I would also like to thank Mr. Knoll for coming here to share his story with us, and also Alex for sharing his amazing insight, and also your final project. That seems like a pretty cool project. I didn't even know we had like an abandoned outdoor classroom. That seems pretty amazing that you seventh graders are doing that. Because I remember back when I was Alex's age, I was really chubby and a super shy kid. And my dad was a younger man with much better fashion sense and slightly more hair. Uh, for the Christmas of 2015, my dad bought me this brand new bright blue bike. And I remember seeing this bike and thinking to myself, well, dang, my dad finally realized I didn't know how to ride a bike yet. And my brother Sohan was in the same boat as well. So we got through that together. It was a very fun experience. See, when I was growing up, my dad and I bonded over activities in our own way. While other kids learned from their dads how to ride bikes and hit a home run, I learned from my dad how to perform a checkmate in 3 moves and serve a tennis ball. While other kids watched a football game with their dads on Thanksgiving, my dad and I would watch whatever new Marvel or DC movie was out in theaters. This was just how we show our love for one another. And he truly cares about me. I know this because currently he's bringing me on this trip to Boston to see if the college that I'm attending is truly the right fit for me. Or maybe the reason could have been that he just loves the seafood here, but it's the thought that counts. And then, speaking of thoughts, about 3 years ago, my dad made a commitment to document what he feels every day in this little app that basically operates as a photo journal. It's called Penzu, and my dad likes to think of it as Instagram without all the artsy teenagers and the constant judgment. At first, when my dad bought this app, he told us he was trying to be spontaneous and start a new project. I told him, like the supportive son I am, that's not spontaneous. That's just like being financially irresponsible. And so and I always mocked my dad's embarrassing public selfies. And then if you're one of my friends, you've probably seen him. He takes a photo in a very weird way. He does like this. And then also, uh, he writes these little short journal entries about seemingly meaningless things, like what's his favorite type of enchilada sauce in our local Mexican restaurant, Alendio. But I just now realized the significance of this journal app to him. He uses it as a way to capture our growth throughout these last few years before college and the fun times we have had. The moments when I'm closest with my dad is when we're sharing our cynical viewpoints with one another, or when we're playing some Call of Duty in the basement, or when we're just both cracking up over a joke that only we would laugh at, and my mom would frown upon that. Because it's in these moments that I forget about the homework that I need to be doing, and my dad forgets about like how he has to wake up very early the next morning for work. And we just remember that we're working for each other. It's strange how many things I have in common with my dad. But really, if you take away the roles of father and son, of teacher and student, and of leader and follower, you find something very special. That we are just reflections of the people who form us into who we are. All of us are here tonight solely because of our fathers who worked hard to get us here. And it's because of the toil, hardships, and hard work that our dads persevered through to help us achieve this level of excellence. Most importantly, it is through the grace of God that we are able to be here, father and son together. It is the brotherhood that unites every Priory student together, and the relationship between father and son that directly comes from the nature of God himself. For as long as I can remember, my dad says, remember, it's only special because of God that these talents are bestowed upon us. And I think this is why Priory is so special. Like Mr. Reese says, in Priory, fathers recognize that they aren't the reason their sons are great. They know their son's abilities come from the Heavenly Father, and so they have done everything they can to get their son to get closer to God by sending them to Priory. Tom Brady once said, "Who's my hero? That's a great question. Well, I think my dad's my hero because he's someone I look up to every day." I think this quote is more powerful than it seems. See, it reveals a profound truth about ourselves. We often claim our heroes are people like Gandhi, Churchill, or the baby, but have we actually shook the hands of these men? Have we ever gone out to eat some late night pizza with them and talk about our girl troubles? Have they ever hugged us in a time of need? No, none of these supposed heroes have ever been there for us. But you know who has? Our fathers. When I was in seventh grade, everyone had to read a play called Our Town by Thornton Wilder. Toward the end of it, one of the main characters, Emily, has just died of childbirth, and she has the opportunity to watch herself live any day of her life. Against the warnings of several other souls in purgatory, she decides to travel back in time to her 12th birthday. And when she gets there, she encounters something disheartening, that she didn't have time to take a minute and stop and look at her mom, that she spent her time on earth living life without realizing it. So, fathers, sons, I ask one thing of you now. I want you to take a moment and put the weight and responsibility of the world behind you and just look at each other. And if you look deep enough, you just might see something special. Thank you.
Now I'm going to pass it over to Ben Noll. Ben is a graduate of Priory. He went to the Wharton School of Business at UPenn, followed in Father Gregory's footsteps, and he graduated in 2004. He played football at Penn, and he continued that path into the NFL. Played in the NFL for 5 years with the Cowboys, the Rams, and the Lions. Ben is married to a doctor, OBGYN, who is, I believe, is on call right now. So let's just hope, and Ben's got 3 young kids. So let's just hope she's not delivering a baby and those kids are not nipping at your heels right now. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Ben Noll. Welcome, Ben.
Good morning. How's everyone doing today? You should be able to see my screen. You're able to see the screen? Is that working? Perfect. So, my name is Ben Noll. Thank you to Murph, Alex, and Devin for the opportunity to be able to present, to the Father and Son Brunch. I've actually did this 15 years ago. And just like last time, the Form 1 and 6 students knocked it out of the park. And so what was really meaningful was, Alex, you're speaking of the Guild. That's something that my class, the class 2000, was the one that started. And their window still hangs in the main lobby of the school. And that's something that really brought the class together, and is a tremendous testament to their work and their attention to detail. And those individuals still keep touch. So keep up with that. And then Devin, you're going to Harvard. I'm excited for you as someone who got to compete against many of those. I think Priory sets you up well for that school because there's more intramurals there than there is in any other college institution. The Ivy League was actually started as a football conference. So your athletic background of being forced into athletics and being able to do that is going to be great. I would encourage you to go to the Gardner Museum there. There is more to Boston than you could imagine. So I wish you luck with your father in checking that out. But really what we want to be able to get into today is how Priory gave me the 3 skills to realize my dreams. It's a scenario where I don't think you really appreciate Priory until about 10, maybe 15 years after you graduate. I know I certainly didn't in 2004 when I had the last time to present this. And then additionally in that time, I've also become a dad. And it's one of those things where, Father Cuthbert talked about, St. Joseph. And it's one of those things where until you become a dad, you can't possibly appreciate what your dad did for you. Several of the other speakers have highlighted how they make the world simple. They allow you to focus on yourself. And so we're going to get in today, what is my true dream? Hint, it's not the NFL. And we're going to be able to get that going. So who am I? Again, class of 2000, got the opportunity to attend University of Pennsylvania. We'll talk about how a mentor of mine made that a reality in this conversation. I played 5 years in the NFL. It was a great time. Got my annuity, my pension, my benefits. My wife wouldn't date me despite being a football player, so we overcome that hurdle. But we'll talk about the joys of that. But again, even if you reach your dreams, be careful what you wish for. We'll include more about that in our conversation. I've been 12 years of technology sales, so at Worldwide Technology. So if any of you've seen that building off of 270, we're the $13.7 billion company that no one's heard about. We work with the Fortune 100, and we solve business outcomes through technology. And so it's neat because the account that I supported is where my wife works at. So literally on a day-to-day basis, I'm helping her be a better physician. And so that's my passion. That's my why. You'll see my right on my wife there on the right. But if you're like Worldwide, how else do they affect the world? If you go to a Cardinals baseball game, the pitcher that they're determining it through analytics is with Worldwide. If you go to the grocery store and are how are they keeping up their inventory in the back end, that's through Worldwide. And if you're at a Panera Bread, again, and I'd be happy to tell as you go through your career, if you have any questions about Worldwide, get into that. But it's a really neat company to work for, St. Louis based, et cetera. I live in Nashville. That's because that's where my wife wants to live. So happy wife, happy life. You can see a picture of her to the right. And then those three kids are my everything. And we'll talk about how Priory helped me focus on them. My interests are rugby, chess, and bourbon. So Devin, happy to play chess against you anytime. I wish you luck in mating me in 3. But all 3 of those virtues were things that I figured out at Priory. So I look forward to being able to give you more details about that if you have any questions. So you see this good looking guy to the left, that was me, about the same time that you are, Devin. And the question is, how do you in 1,000 days reach your dreams? And what skills do you focus on the day-to-day basis to reach those? And so it's a challenging thing because to realize your dreams, you first have to self-reflect, find a center and then work harder than anyone else to reach that. But then, as Devin said, we're a reflection of the people we surround. So surround yourself with great people to be able to reach that. That at a very high level is the 3 gifts that Priory gave me, and being able to roll this dream out. So we'll talk about that. So the dropped out of school my final semester, that was a father-son conversation where my senior year at Penn, my buddy was like, let's go to the NFL, we can make it. And I go, I don't know about you, but you and I were not, we didn't play at Clemson, we didn't play at Ohio State. Like, why do we feel like we have the attributes needed? And my best friend at the time, so surrounding yourself with great people, said, we have the characteristics, but more importantly, the mental makeup to actually handle the rigors of it. And I go, okay, like, I'll try. So I went to my dad. I was like, Dad, this is a crazy idea. Should I drop out of my last semester at Penn and just try out my dream? And I honestly thought he was going to tell me no, that he was going to be a roadblock. That would have been a very convenient excuse. But credit my father, who said, if that's really something that you're passionate about, go try it out. What's the worst that you happen? You come back, next fall with your sister and graduate at the same time? Sure. So we were able to do that. In June, I was picked up by the Rams, hometown kid playing for Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce and Orlando Pace, and Jackie Slater was my O-line coach. And I'm sure the Form 1 through 6 students are like, who are those names? But all the dads know who those are. And I was like, you're gonna pay me money to work out with my idols? Sure. Like, okay. Ended up doing training camp. It was a scenario where I think Priory gave me, there was never a point where the moment was too big for me. I think Priory gave me that confidence. The individuals that had coached me told me what to focus on. And I just kept staying in the moment and focused on that. And so we were able to impress enough people to make it on an NFL roster. And so this is the picture of our 2004 Cowboys. And so for the dads, you'll know who Coach Parcells is. I think it was interesting being coached underneath his leadership because he always took more joy in the people around him succeeding. And so the neat part about this is if you look at these other coaches, you've got Sean Payton here. You've got, who's the Saints, obviously. You've got Zimmer, who is over at the Vikings. Tony Sparano was a head coach of the Dolphins. Todd Haley was a head coach with the Chiefs. Warhop was a coach. I mean, you've got like 9 different people that became head coaches. But even if you look at like Dan Campbell, he's now the current coach of the Dolphins, right? And so it's pretty amazing. And if you want to talk about Hall of Fame players, you've got, Eddie George and Larry Allen. And my locker mate here was this Jason Witten, individual. And so it was a scenario where I was, featured in Sports Illustrated, playing on Monday Night Football, dating a cheerleader. If you had told me 1,000 days ago that was going to be my life, I'd be like, sign me up. And what happens as you reach your dreams, you do it for a couple of years, and then you realize, like, are my daily activities glorifying the Lord? Am I truly reaching his world? Like, my favorite thing playing was actually on Tuesdays, we'd go visit hospitals, we'd go visit firehouses, we'd go visit schools, and just giving back to the community, was the thing that I really enjoyed. So I want to let you know, like, you may have a dream right now, and you may even reach it. But it's a scenario where, you need to keep your heart open to the Lord, constantly being evaluating, is that where he wants you to go, and taking it. And then eventually I realized the 49ers were calling me. They wanted me to go play over there. And I was like, there's this girl that I really, want to see if it's going to work out. And so I eventually ended up leaving the NFL, for that, and not going to the 49ers. And to this day, I don't regret it. It was one of the best decisions I made, was setting down that mantle, and focusing on my wife and my family. But again, feel free to if you have any more questions about the NFL, feel free to email into the chat. Really what I want to talk about is those 3 skill sets of how I was able to accomplish my dreams. And so I think the gift that you realize that Priory gives you, you don't realize it till later, because it's set up in the foundation, right? The Order of Saint Benedict, he was a pretty bright guy when he thought of this stuff up. And when you look closer at the monk's life, they really divide their day into 3 separate but equal portions, of 8 hours of prayer, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours of rest. I think the order of that is incredibly intentional. I don't think that he missed a thought or didn't write it down. I think that you need to really review how you go about reaching your dreams, and incorporate, the role models of the monastic life. It was something that, when I first came at 7th grade, I wanted to be a monk. I felt that was my calling. And so it was a scenario where, I, got the chance. I was just like Alex. I didn't have routine mass growing up. I finally got into it. And I was like, daily or weekly mass is pretty good. Reading from the Bible every day, like there's a piece of this that's calling to me. And I was just like Alex in that I didn't have friends going into Priory. I was a public school kid all the way up to that point, Alex. So I really appreciate you sharing your story, because it was very similar to my own. And I actually joined the football team just to learn everyone's names. They put the names on the helmet. And I was like, wait a minute, I can go to a practice and I can like meet these people and like learn their names. Like, oh, I should probably definitely do that. And then the other thing we always used to do as a class was just play football on the lawn at like 7 a.m. when I got dropped off. Like there was always a game going on. And so it was a scenario where that was a great melting pot for our class. But the other really unique thing about Priory is the monks, is that I felt like I had, it was my dad is my rock, he's my foundation. Everything I am is because of him. But there's a piece of me that really appreciated having the monks' guidance, because I felt like I had 30 more dads, and each one of those dads had a unique thing. They weren't all into Marvel, Devin. So I'll give them that. They weren't into that at my time frame. But I thought each one of them brought a unique love or passion, and they were willing to share it with you. And I thought that was pretty magical. So the one on the right, the upper right, is Father Gerard. He was the pastor of St. Alensum, if you don't know him. And so he was my first monk that I really connected with. And I was net new to Priory, didn't know anybody. I was getting in altercations just because I was trying to jostle and figure out my way through it. And we used to fight. And I don't know if they still play football today and all that. And so it's a scenario where we used to roughhouse, and he would just say, "No blood on the carpet." That was his only rule. But he used to challenge me if I did end up getting blood on the carpet. To really just take 10 minutes and think what God thought about it. It wasn't about being disciplined by Marty Combs. It wasn't being yelled at. It was literally think about God for 10 minutes. Like that was his mode of punishment, which ended up giving me my greatest gifts. And then the one to the lower right is Father Rafe. He will forever be in my heart because he was the first individual who leaned in at my academic work and said, Ben, this is a great poem that you have. I really appreciate your passion and where you're going with it. If you fix these or tweak these a little bit, this is going to get published. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't write this poem about pain to be published. I wrote it because it was an outlet for me to get things off my chest. And so again, there's things like that where if you open up and you listen and you allow these monks to be able to share those passions, you're going to come out with it, different and better than when you started. And then after that, it's all about working. So for me, for junior school, that was really my focus. That was my experience as I went through Priory, and that was the skill that I picked up. So again, if you have any more questions about that, email into chat, and Janice will get those to me here at the end. For me, the next segment of Priory was Form 3 and 4. It was a scenario where the individual in the upper right is Father Bede Price. And so early in the conversation, Murph had talked about these individuals will be with you for your life. I was hanging out with Father Price 2 weeks ago. He runs a church here in Nashville. And we were hanging out with some of my other alumni in the backyard. So these relationships that you develop in Priory will be with you in 20 years from now and 40 years from now. And they will be integral in your development, and also just helping you keep sane. So Murph, that was not that's indefinitely what we see the rest of the alumni body doing. But Father Price was excellent because I took his religious study course 25 years ago, and I was great at studying Catholicism, great at the catechism, and then we started getting into other religions, and I it's not that I didn't care, I just was so consumed with what I was passionate about. And Father Price was like, no, you really need to give these other studies some more of your time. And I was like, why? And he was like, that way you can appreciate their beauty, and be able to articulate positions with them, for, against, etc. Because you're going to meet other individuals in your life that are not going to be from this same sphere. And I was like, okay. And lo and behold, he was onto something, as usual. Letting these monks in, opening my heart to them, was great. Another unique thing that occurred at that time in my life at Priory was I took the art history class, Dr. Urchi. And so it was a scenario where I got to learn about the Sistine Chapel, and got to learn about Constantinople, and got to learn about the Avignon papacy, and again, by opening up my heart to my teachers at Priory, I was able to find about something net new in life. Ended up taking art history classes at Penn, ended up visiting these monuments and relics, and they just mean something different if you understand what was going on when they were generated, why they were generated, what purpose they served in the society at that time. And you just appreciate the glory of God at a higher level when you're looking at it and are educated in the manner that Priory gets. So again, you won't realize how lucky you are to have Priory until it's 10 years down the road. But then you'll look back and be like, yeah, I was able to take my wife to this building and articulate what was occurring, why, what value was, and able to enrich her life and then my children's life as a result of Priory. So, and the last thing on the lower right here is the Penn football, or the Priory football team. I think it was unique because we won the championship, but it wasn't just us in the picture. If you look here, you've got the trainers, you've got the coaches. And I think that was integral that we didn't, the glory wasn't ours. It was our community that we had developed, that ended up winning the championship, not just the players on the field. And if you look through some of these players, you've got like Mike Reedy here, who's our alumni president. Chris Convey is running radio shows downtown. I mean, Titans of St. Louis were represented in this, but we would not have accomplished our initial glory nor gone to things greater in life without these men here, like Marty Combs and Finan. And it was a scenario where I was taught, and you have an excellent resource in Jake Parent. If you listen to his videos and realize his struggles and where he came from, you've got the exact version of that if you open up your heart to him at Priory currently. But what was really unique about Coach Combs, this time, sophomore year of high school, I was not a dominant football player. I was getting my butt kicked by Redmond and Tobin. And it was one of those things where I became a dominant player only because of putting in the work, listening to my mentors. And eventually I was I got beat up as a small kid. I took the small kid mentality, and junior and senior year, putting on 20 and 30 pounds of muscle and a couple inches of height, was able to play like with the small kid mentality, but now with a big kid body. And that was a really bad problem for our opponents. But again, it was something where these mentors are the reason why we were able to achieve that, because they could see us struggling, but they didn't bail us out. They put us in positions to grow. And then we were able to execute. And I asked Marty Combs, a year ago, I was like, Marty, like there was great football players that I played with. There was great football players prior. Like, what was the thing that separated me from the pack? And he was like, Ben, you just never stopped. You would get stoned, you'd get blocked, you just kept working. You kept working. And so that's the thing I would encourage you in Form 3 and 4. That's when life starts hitting you, and you start trying net new things. Things are struggling a little bit. Utilize the vision that you acquired from Form 1 and 2, but now put in the work and just don't stop working. And then the last part of Priory for me is when I almost felt like I had one foot out the door. I was like Devin, as I was looking at schools, and I was getting out and going to football camps at Notre Dame and Illinois and Mizzou and Kansas, and just exploring the world. But the thing that was really neat for me was I continued to listen to God, open up my heart, and Father Augustine was a great, he was just old enough for me that I wanted to be him. I didn't have the flowing hair that he had at the time, but he used to bike out to our family out in Wildwood. So that's a hike. And it was a scenario where he was like, Ben, I think you'd really like this game, rugby. And I was like, rugby, like, is the English game where they tackle each other without pads? He's like, it's so much more than that. Let me share with you this world. And to this day, I played rugby 2 weeks ago. It's something it's my favorite sport to play. Additionally, it was my favorite team at Priory. JV basketball was number 2, if that gives you any idea, our priorities and how they stack rank there. But Father Augustine was someone who showed me a whole new world. And 2 weeks ago, when I was hanging out with my alumni buddy, it wasn't about how great we were back at football. It was talking about rugby. And now when I go with my UK clients, like, we go watch rugby games. So anyways, it's one of those things where continue to open your heart, take advantage of the personalities and people you have at Priory, because they're going to affect your life for 20 more years, 30 more years. And then the lower right individual, I think most of you know, is Abbott. It was a scenario where I was, if you haven't taken his Dante class, please do. And if you're in the younger forms, that's a class you need to take while you're at Priory. But it was a scenario where I was like, Father, I'm not quite sure where I'm going to end up. You have always been my mentor. You've always been the individual I've looked up to the most. And I'm glad to see Father Cuthbert is stepping into that role for students there. But Father Gregory, I was like, where did you go? Like, tell me about your experience. And he walked through, the what Du Bois House was at University of Pennsylvania. He accomplished X, Y, and Z. And until that point, I had not even looked at Penn. And obviously I ended up realizing that it had Division I athletics plus the Wharton School of Business. And I felt like that could be the home for me. So, that's the kind of impact that these monks will have on your life. I don't meet my wife. I don't do all the things I do without continuing down that path. And so again, open your heart, put in the work, and then surround yourself with some really great people. If I don't have my best friend at Penn telling me to go to the NFL, I don't make it in the NFL. If I don't end up meeting, one of my buddies introduced me to my wife, and now I would say a majority of the business, acumen that I generate is through my peers, my mentors. And so that's something you always want to be intentional on is who you're putting yourself around, and how you're doing. So let's talk about my dream. It's not the NFL. If you figured out, it's these three. So, my children from left to right are my 1-year-old is Genevieve, my 4-year-old middle is Zach, and my 6-year-old is Evelyn. And so I needed to stick with the blueprint, right? So with my 1-year-old, I need to be intentional about taking her to mass. I need to be intentional about, and I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way to do it, but like, how do I introduce the Bible, to her? This pandemic has really forced dads to reevaluate their priorities, and make sure that they're incorporating that when they can't actually go physically to mass. So your dreams are constantly changing and moving. But again, you stick to the principles, you'll be able to hit it. For my son, Zach, he is a rolling ball of energy. He thinks that church is the donut place, and I'm fine with that. But he's in Catholic school now, so he will say grace. He will do the sign of the cross. He will even be on his knees and pray without anyone saying. So I feel like as a dad, I just need to make sure I'm present, that I'm there listening, for anything that antagonizes his character, to stop him, but at the same time, let him be the full expression of Jesus that's already within him. I don't need to mess with it. I just need to make sure the guardrails are on. And then for the one on the right is Evelyn. Again, I see her for an hour in the morning and 2 hours at night, right? So 3 hours, right? And as a dad, that's the hardest part. Like, you have such a little time to motivate, to develop. And so you have to put a community around that individual to get them to achieve their full vision. And so with her, like, I obviously put her in Catholic school. We had her in public school the year prior. And so I made the conscious choice of that would be in her best interest. And there were some struggles initially, but she loves it now. The other thing about developing community is, like, who do I go to the park with? I go to the park with my friends who have the same cultural and character values that I have, and their children exemplify that as well. So I extend my presence of 3 hours by surrounding her with good influences at school, surrounding her with good influences in her recreational time. And again, I don't think I've got this figured out. I'm 6 years into this thing, and there's much more experienced individuals on this call, but that's the struggles of being a dad. And it's something you just can't even appreciate until you get into, but that is my dream. That is the thing that I wake up every day considering and focusing on, going forward. So to reach your dreams, I would just really encourage you to take advantage of priority. You're not going to, if I haven't showed you the different ways that it's affected my life enough, you're not going to fully appreciate it a decade, 2 decades from now, but you will. And so the things that I would ask you as someone who's an alumni is, what classes are you doing? What sports? I think it's unique that priority makes everyone play a sport. When you go to college, Devin, a lot of those other kids wouldn't have had to play sports. They would have been unique at something else, but you would have understood what it's being a part of a team, whether that was you were a manager, whether that was you actually played. So that's pretty unique. So continue to challenge your norms by trying new things like rugby in your senior year. You might actually find out you like it. Who are your mentors and how are they holding you accountable? Are you taking advantage of Father Cuthbert and Jake Parent? Mormon was there when I was there. Like, are you incorporating them in your life? Are you opening up your passions and what you do love to do? Are you showing them their work? Are you pulling them aside and doing office hours? Priory is expensive, but there's no better investment that you can make than showing your passion to one of those educators. I guarantee you the return on that investment is going to far exceed any check that your dad writes this year. And then the last thing I think is actually the most important. It's how are you making your peers better? And I'm not talking about beating them in Snoot or Goldeneye like I used to do with Father Cuthbert, but how you as a leader can set a standard in everything you do. I don't care if that's being polite to the lunch lady. I don't care if that is working on the field and the drill is supposed to be done a certain way. That could be even in your stained glass project. Whatever that is, I want you to realize that as a leader, it's your job to help enforce the standard. And I'm not saying pressure or yell or make a fuss of it, but maybe just realize that they're probably going through something that day and that you can step aside and help them improve that project, maybe work side by side with them. But just let you know that's something that I would encourage you to focus on. But again, regardless of your dreams, I think focusing on how the Order of St. Benedict went about their day of pray, work, and rest, incorporating those into your daily habits is going to help you reach your dreams, whether that's NFL, raising great kids, whatever your dream may be. So